views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime, and today we continue our conversation. People ask us, what is the Social Justice Forum all about? Well, it's a show that provides a deeper understanding of many of the issues that people face. We deal with the inequities. We promote multiple viewpoints, and we also promote civic engagement. And so we want you to stay connected to us. Very special show. Social Justice Forums begins right now. Scholas is a national organization advancing economic mobility through rigorous training, professional development, and robust employer connections. Now, the organization prepares individuals traditionally underrepresented in technology for high-growth careers in the industry. A recent report published by the Center for an Urban Future and Scholas revealed nearly 1 in 5 of all new job postings at NYC during COVID have been for technology occupations. Joining us to provide their point of view on the matter, I am joined by the Executive Vice President of Diversity and Operational Excellence at Scholas, Ken Walker. And Ken, good to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good to have you. And as we're talking, I want to talk a little bit about the digital divide. Because when we really think about what's going on right now, there was a digital divide. COVID has further exacerbated the digital divide because Scholas is right there in the middle trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah. So interesting, Daren. When we started 25 years ago, our focus was primarily on the digital divide. And what we did in the early days, provide computers to folks within the community. We were in middle schools within the Bronx. We were at senior centers, and we provided technology as well as digital literacy training. And we successfully handed out and sold tons of computers to the community. And so in 2012, when we sort of pivoted from that focus, it was incredibly interesting to us to continue to hear that this digital divide still exists. You know, when we divested from that focus, we were definitely feeling we're on our way. The Department of Education was providing computers for folks in schools, and we were thinking we beat this. But the pandemic has revealed to us in stark ways that the digital divide is real. Broadband access is not shared across all of our households. And so we've had to make sure that the learners and students who come to us, they have the equipment that they need. So if they don't have a computer or if they don't have broadband, we've put together relationships with organizations where we can provide that to make sure at least the folks that we serve have the equipment and the broadband that they need.
Right. We're seeing tech jobs on the rise and an increasing number of people in demand for tech jobs. And when we talk about where we are coming out of COVID, this whole virtual has really led us to a place where tech was hot before. Tech is hot now. Give us a little bit about the work that you're doing in preparing people for this move.
Yeah, so tech is hot. So thank you for saying that. And so for me, I started at IBM many years ago within the tech industry. And I am so pleased to be at a nonprofit that decided that tech was going to be the lane in which we play in. And tech is one of those sectors where, regardless of where you come from, regardless of where you live, you can learn tech, right? And you can start and use the support, IT support, networking, and Black and brown folks, they have talent to go into cybersecurity and cloud computing. And so we have a range of offerings within the tech sector. And again, it's one of those industries where you can start off in an area that is not terribly sophisticated, but you can move through a journey, learning new skills and definitely getting a thriving raise.
Yeah. And we know, particularly in communities of color, they are underrepresented in the tech world. Talk to me about when you have these conversations and you talk about tech to young people and even to adults, right?
Yes.
What are some of the things that you're hearing from them? Is there a general interest in wanting to do it? Is there this fear and apprehension? Because honestly, you talk to some people, they have a hard time navigating their cell phone, much less anything else, right? So what are you hearing from the people that you're coming in contact with?
So most of the folks that we come in contact with, first of all, they're excited about the tech industry, and many of them, they're the member of the family that everybody sort of goes to, and they tinker around with televisions, computers, and they have that passion for sort of getting into technology. They have a curiosity about what is possible within the sector. So most of the folks who come through our doors, they're incredibly excited. Women within tech, sometimes there's a little trepidation, right? Because there are not a ton of women in the tech industry, and we're trying to work on that as an organization. But folks are excited. One thing that we do really, really well is we have our new students and learners talk to alumni, folks who've been successful within the sector, because representation matters, right? And if I'm a Black and brown person coming into, this rigorous training at Scholas, and I have a chance to see people who look like me, who can share stories about how successful that they've been in these major Fortune, 5,000 organizations, that gives me a vision for my future that excites me.
Yeah. And so when you talk about having a vision for the future, you really try to work with students to be able to have that vision, to say, listen, you know what, this is the way to go. So for somebody who may not be so familiar, give us a walkthrough. If I walk through the door and I say, listen, this is, I think about this is something I want to do, something I want to embark on. What can I expect coming through your doors?
Right. So right now, you're probably not going to come through the doors. You're probably going to go online. You're going to go online, and you're going to learn about our remote offerings, right? So when the pandemic first hit, we had to pivot really quickly to online training. And we've been really, really successful, Daren. And so for Scholas, 85% of our students and learners, they graduate, and up to 80% of them, we find jobs. So if you're walking through the door, you're feeling pretty confident that you're working with an organization that's really focused on helping you get through the program. We tell folks up front, it's rigorous, but we do provide the supports through the 12 or 15-week program that will enable you to be successful. So you have options, right? People like options. If you are a novice, we're going to tell you, hey, you should start with IT support. You can't jump to cybersecurity in your first course, but you can, if you're curious enough, you have that grit, you have that perseverance, that you can progress to software engineering or cybersecurity or cloud computing. So because the tech industry is so incredibly fast-paced and growing, we excite our learners. We tell them, hey, you have chosen an excellent place for your career journey, and we are so incredibly happy to support you in your efforts.
Yeah. What are some of the most in-demand jobs that we're hearing about today?
Yeah, so our basic course is IT support. IT support still is an area, a lot of companies still need end user support kinds of jobs and careers. And I think specifically because of the fact that we're in a remote environment, that is still a plentiful sort of area for our learners and students. So for instance, Daren, you're at home, you may have something go wrong with your computer. I mean, how cool would it be for your IT support team to call you, and you probably have experienced this already, to help you through whatever technical problems that you're having. So that's a start. But cloud computing, Amazon Web Services, software engineering, all incredibly popular, all incredibly hot. We have a high demand for all of these opportunities across our 17 campuses nationwide at Scholas. So, the opportunities are plentiful.
Yeah. And you do a tremendous amount of partnerships. I mean, I know you have a partnership that deals with, families.
Yeah.
And then also that partnership with employers. Talk about that relationship with employers.
Yeah. So we determined many, many years ago, Daren, that having great relationships with employers is key. And it is my personal belief that it's all about relationships. Everything is about relationships. And for me, I believe actually the 21st century superpower is having really good relationships and creating ecosystems. And so we have historically partnered with large organizations, medium-sized, small organizations, to have them understand, the journey of the students and learners that we have at our organization. We allow them to participate, right? So they may volunteer, they may help with resume writing, they may help to help with interviews prior to getting specifically engaged with us. And then we have business solutions reps who are a part of our core team who help to match opportunities that employer partners have with the learners that are going through our program. So successful history with employers, we have great relationships. And again, I feel we were really smart to partner with employer partners early on.
Yeah, I think, well, can you hit the nail on the head? I think that with the job market, the way that being it is, and the job market being so scarce, right? Everybody's looking for a job. But when you have that contact, or if you have that relationship, it makes life just a little bit easier. And so if those people come through your program, I'm pretty sure that it becomes a winning selling point to tell people, listen, we have employers that we're connected to, and we can make the connection, for you and with you.
Yeah, and with you. And I'm glad you said with you, Daren, because the Black and Brown learners and students who come through our doors, I mean, they are intimately involved in propelling their career forward. So it's not a handout. One, they're going through this rigorous training. Yes, we're there to support, but it's all them. And so they could share stories of the many books and all the content that they have to get through the training. But they are intimately involved in sort of working with our business solutions folks to get that job. So yes, we're there to assist, but it's all about them. And that to me is the incredible thing about what we do, and specifically in the tech industry. Diversity is what many of these organizations are looking for. And we have 85% of the folks who come through our doors who are diverse. And so in complement to what we do at Scholas, we have a Diverse by Design initiative that we kicked off 5 years ago, where we are specifically focused on getting Black and Brown talent within the tech industry. And so talent is talent. And these businesses are looking to fill skills gap. And we are incredibly proud at Scholas that we have a solution. We have talented folks ready to secure many of those jobs that are now open.
Yeah, you're a nationwide organization doing great things locally right here. And we know right there in the Bronx that, a lot of work is being done to really equip people for that next level. As we're here in the summer and we're trying to navigate through this, talk to us about what people can expect. And they don't necessarily have to come to the doors, but so they can come and open up their computer.
Yeah. So Daren, so before we came on, what I shared with you is this week. So I'm in the Bronx, so I'm at our Bronx campus, and this is the first week we have students on site, and so we are following, all the protocol necessary to keep them safe, because it is incredibly important that Black and brown folks, right, they should feel safe when they come in the environment. And so we are slowly starting our migration back to our national campuses, but making sure that we're looking at focus groups, and we're asking folks about their comfort level. Because the one thing that we want to just make sure that we get right is that when these learners come on our campus site, that they feel as though, one, we care about them, two, they're safe, and we followed all the protocols, and then obviously working with us to get to that end game, which is a job, because that is the ultimate North Star, to get them a job with a thriving rage at Scholas.
Yeah, that feeling about getting them a job. Talk to me about that. What does it feel like? And, seeing them come through your program and then have these alumni that are actually doing big things.
Yeah, so one of the great experiences I have at Scholas, one is our graduation, right? So when a student, a learner has gone through 15 weeks of training, and in the old days, before the pandemic, family members would come in, their support system, their community to share in their success is awesome. It is also very, very, very much the case that a percentage of those students at that 15th week have already found a job. So during our graduation, we're already celebrating a subset of that class that just graduated with a job. Again, I'm sitting in the audience as a student who just went through, and I see my teammate, my colleague, just secure a job at a leading organization. How great is that, right? How psyched are you, right, sitting in the class and saying, "Hey, this guy, this young woman was able to do it. I'm going to be able to do it too." And then having our alumni come back in is absolutely awesome. So someone who's been at an organization for 2 years to come and speak to our learners and sort of share their early experiences on the job, I think is incredibly important, because getting the job is step one, maybe step two, but staying in the job, working with employer partners on retention. What kind of supports are you, employer A or B, providing for the learners that we have entrusted you with, to keep them there? How are you getting them sort of into the culture of the organization, right? Sometimes this is a shock for Black and brown folks coming into, these big corporate organizations. And so we try to, get you prepared at Scholas, but then we really depend on employer partners to make sure in, that first year or two that they're putting some supports in place to keep our talent there.
Yeah. Kim Walker, we got to leave it there, but I want to thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for helping to bridge that gap.
Yes.
For Scholas, it's much needed, and definitely we'll continue to keep our audience updated as to the things that you're doing and the great work you're doing. Thanks much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All righty.
All right.
Gotta take a quick break. We'll be back with more on the social justice forums. We continue the conversation right after these breaks.
This year, New York City began using ranked choice voting in primary and special elections for local offices, such as mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and city council. Ranked choice voting means that voters can rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference, instead of casting a vote for just one. You can still vote for just one candidate if you prefer. So, how will your ballot look? Your ballot will look the same as always, except now there will be a checkbox with ranking numbers depending on how many candidates there are in a race. So how does it work? If your first choice gets over 50% of votes, they automatically win the race. If none of the candidates get more than 50% of votes on the first round, then the candidate with the least amount of votes gets eliminated, and the votes get recounted again in a second round of counting. Here's an example. Let's rank colors. I like blue the most, so I'm marking it 1. I like purple second, green third, and orange fourth. Okay, my votes are in. Now other votes are counted and the results are as follows. Blue earned 36%, purple earned 27%, green earned 19%, and orange earned 18%. As you can see, none of these colors earned more than 50% of the votes. So the one with the smallest amount of votes gets eliminated. Voters who chose orange as their first choice now have their votes distributed to their second choice. This continues until a candidate receives 50% of the votes and becomes the official winner of the race. That's it. That's ranked choice voting. Ready? Let's vote.
And welcome back. Youth Justice Network is a not-for-profit organization that's aiming to break the cycles of incarceration and build an equitable justice system by providing young people with individualized advocacy, mentorship, and opportunities to grow, thrive, and lead. The organization was rooted in collaboration between educators, social service staff, and community advocates who wanted to address recidivism rates, untapped potential, as well as disproportionate minority representation among the thousands of adolescents who attended high school on Rikers Island. Joining me now and sharing a little bit more about this, I'm joined by the Friends to Fathers case manager at Youth Justice Network, the Reverend Bernard Shepard. And Reverend Shepard, good to have you.
Thank you. My pleasure being here.
And so when we talk about youth justice, Rikers Island, we know the story, we know the history, but you're pretty passionate about making sure that youth have some accessibility and also some resources during a critical time in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. One of the things that's very important to us is understanding that our youth feel an overwhelming sense of abandonment at times. The system has continuously failed them on multiple levels. And so what we try to do is establish a level of trust. All things work better in this field that we're trying to do with time, resources, and trust. And that's one of the things that we attempt to do in the community, but more especially in confinement, because the role of our jails is incarceration, not really rehabilitation. And so our young people are there and they are locked in. And when we join them, we are not locked in, but we are locked up with them. And we try to establish a medium of understanding with them.
If people don't know about the Youth Justice Network, introduce us to your organization because I'll be honest, I didn't know about you guys.
Well, the Youth Justice Network has actually been around. The name used to be Friends of Island Academy. It was founded on the school floor of Rikers Island when it was back in the 1980s. This organization has been there throughout all of that time in one capacity or another. Most recently, about 2014, we got a contract with the Department of Corrections, and we were there literally 5 days a week. My capacity was a coordinator at the Rose M. Singer Center, and I worked in the evenings in development programs with Friends of Island Academy at that time. Now it's the Youth Justice Network. And it's the same work: build trust, establish a process of helping our young people understand that there are alternatives. A lot of times, our young people have not become hopeless. Many times, it's just a matter of them having given up hope. And hope is a very rare and precious commodity when you're trying to get people to look within and find their true selves. And Youth Justice Network, Friends of Island Academy, has been neck deep in that work for a very long time.
Yeah. When we talk about incarceration, we know the school to prison pipeline, that's very real. We
Yes.
know that young people are going down the road of incarceration at record rates, and some at their own doing, a lot very questionable. How do we get to the place of actually reducing incarceration? And I'll give you, you know, and you can use your organization as an example.
Honestly, that's a very good question. And I sincerely tell you that when we say, how do we get them to? We get them to the point through long-term involvement with these young people, inside and outside, helping them understand that the work is up to them. A lot of times we're working against mores and standards that may seem strange to many of us. And it is imperative that we understand these human lives really need to have their focus changed. We can't change anyone's focus. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a miracle work that we do. What I am suggesting is that through trust, developing trust, letting them know that we're not going to turn our backs on, and letting them know that we do believe and will work with them to change certain dynamics in their own lives. When we work with a young person, we have them for a moment. When they go back to their communities, then their real world kicks in. And it's so, in helping them understand that we are a pipeline, and helping these young people know that they can call us and find out that someone is going to talk them and help talk them off their ledge, whatever that ledge may be. I think that has a good way of, or a good opportunity for us to let them know that they're not alone. And a lot of times, many young people just feel that they're very much alone and they have no alternatives to the lifestyles that they have.
We're seeing numbers, and as I said, record numbers of disproportionate young people being jailed within our criminal justice system, and particularly in New York City jails. Give us a little bit about your insight as to what you're seeing from your perspective.
Well, that has changed over the years. When we had search and frisk and some of the other dubious law enforcement methods in place, the jails really swelled up. A lot of our children were there for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, guilty by association. This goes back to even the days many decades ago, where men were walking in the roads in South Carolina, where I'm from, and picked up and taken to incarceration facilities, or what we commonly known as chain gangs, simply because they were who they were. I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, our young people on the streets, say 7, 8, 10 years ago, just being arrested, incarcerated, pat down, and being in a group where maybe one person was doing something and several other people got incarcerated with them. I'm very careful about using the phrase, the justice system. I've often found it to be a system of injustice. And I'm mindful that, yes, some of our young people have committed some crimes. I get that. Historically, any impoverished community usually has higher crime rates than the general norm. But I do believe that some of the measures that have been taken to incarcerate our young people have been done without proper judgment. And our young people needed to understand how to navigate the streets, how to navigate their communities, so that they don't run afoul of that system.
We look at what's going on right now, how we can help them in a system that's really designed to fail them. We think about the criminal justice system, it's cyclical, and we're trying to break recidivism rates. Once a person enters in, you hope that they don't come back out. I mean,
Yes.
they come back out, but don't come back in. And one of those things that I know that we talk about is making sure that they have examples. I've often talked to people about exposure. I was just having a conversation with my family last week about how do we help people. And I've said exposure. And one of the things about exposure is when you have exposure and mentorship, it makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
I know that you guys engage in mentorship as well.
Yes.
And in the words of Dr. Phil, how's that working for you?
I think the mentorship component through our Arches program, through our youth advocacy programs, through Friends to Fathers is phenomenal. What young people are looking for, and even some of our older people, is a lifeline. Mentorship serves as not so much a big brother or big sister, but we need to have elders in our communities to help guide our young people into a better path of walking, of thinking, of taking action or inaction. A lot of our kids are responding instead of thinking through. Mentorship provides that moment of reason where many of our young people will call and say about or talk about a situation that's really causing them some discomfort or action. And our mentors, I commend them all. They go out, they meet these young people in the street, they'll talk to them. We've had youth advocates that have become godmothers to some of our people's children and become foster uncles in the same way. It's about relationships. It's about helping people understand that they're not alone. I go back to that because many of our young people feel a profound sense of abandonment. And many of them come from situations where they don't have that arm or that ear to speak into to give them sound feedback. And I think that's very important. It does work. It requires time. It requires resources. It requires focus and intent, but with perseverance and not letting go, we do manage to help wherever we can.
Yeah. And when we talk about helping, we got to help our young people. And when we talk about our young people, you got to talk about our young ladies because we're finding more and more young ladies finding themselves in the criminal justice system. I think more now than ever before. Talk to us about the work that's being done with helping young ladies out.
That is such a multi-tiered discussion. Our young women, as I found out when I went to Rosie's, the Rose M. Singer Center to function as the coordinator. It's a story that you really don't understand the brokenness, the level of hopelessness that many of our young women feel. I've seen things that have actually brought me to tears working with these young women. I have a young lady that I met at Rose M. Singer Center when she was 16. And yesterday she was still calling me for help. And she's 26. And the help never stops. Our young women find themselves broken on multiple levels, especially in jail. And as bad as the situation is for our young men, our young women find multiple levels of degradation in the jail system. They find themselves being not only subjugated to tiered levels of abuse, but even to the extent that if you have a program at a men's jail, everyone shows up. The relatives, whomever they invite, will show up for. When you have the same kind of event at a woman's jail, say Rosie's, my experience was that no one showed up. No one from the community came. That seems so foreign and unreasonable, but I would have to invite other members of their cell block to come and celebrate their accomplishments so that they would have someone rooting for them. And this is not an isolated incident. I've had young women who have been walking the streets, and we've been working with them and helping them learn and get parenting classes And the despair, the level of despair has been so intense. I've had some of these same young women say, listen, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I'm just not any good. I'm broken that way. This is who I am, and I'm going to stay that way. And so finding that avenue where you can help a young woman understand her worth, it really comes down to that. A lot of our young women are caught into the cycle of incarceration simply because they really see no way out. We've had young women commit crimes during the colder months just so they can come in and get medical care and know that they're going to be in a warmer environment and get medical care and steady meals. I've seen it all play out. I think anyone who has been in the system as long as I have and has seen these things understands that in the community and in our jail systems, our young women are in a desperate state of need, psychologically, emotionally, provisionally, and in the community as well. They just need more, and they need more intensive focus. And being a father of two daughters and now two granddaughters, I can tell you that it really does impact me in ways that I never thought I would be impacted, because I simply didn't know the level of their plight until I actually experienced it.
As we get ready to go, I want to make sure I get an opportunity for you just to also share a little bit about Friends to Fathers.
Phenomenal organization. I'm very happy. Having worked with the women so long, I'm very happy and pleased and excited about working with Friends to Fathers. They offer workshops, parenting skills, financial literacy, career development, and classes for domestic battery and batterers accountability. And the types of counseling we do are peer support, anger management, parenting, and individual counseling. We have bi-weekly sessions, and personally, I think it's one of the more rewarding things I've done. Now, these men are mandated to come, but the point is they do come. Mandated doesn't mean they don't have choices. A lot of the men we work with genuinely care about becoming better fathers, better parenting, co-parents, better husbands, and they really come and shed a lot of weight in the Friends to Fathers organization. And I find it a very rewarding experience to work with them.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us about your organization, doing some great work. And certainly we want to applaud you and thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums. And as we said, incarceration is a real big issue, particularly in communities of color, but we're glad to have organizations such as yours that are really standing in the gap. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. We want you to stay with us. Guess what? We've got a little bit more show. Don't go anywhere. We're coming back in a few seconds.
If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
Katal Center for Health, Equity, and Justice is a growing team of professionals with decades of collective experience in community organizing, policy advocacy, strategy development, training political campaigns, as well as communications. Now, their goals are to build leadership and organize the capacity of neighborhood residents, as well as organizers, advocates, and community groups to effectively drive and shape systematic change. They also work to end mass incarceration, mass criminalization, and the war on drugs, as well as advancing solutions to promote and secure health, equity, and justice. Joining us now, I'm pleased to have sharing with us on this matter. I'm joined by the Director of Community Organizing at the Katal Center for Equity, Health, and Justice, Kenyatta Muzzani. And Kenyatta, good to have you.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And for somebody who may not be so familiar with your organization, I gave a mouthful, but tell us a little bit more in layman's terms about the work of the Katal Center.
Will do. And again, Daren, you did a really great job of introing who we are. I was going to share of our 3 interrelated goals, and I'll quickly recap them and then just, again, speak in layman's terms like you had said about what we do. So again, I'm Kenyatta with the Katal Center for Equity, Health, and Justice. And as an organization, we have 3 interrelated goals that Daren shared. The first of which is to end mass incarceration, mass criminalization, and the war on drugs. And we do that because we know that so many people in our communities, especially people of color, Black people, Latinx people, have been impacted by the war on drugs. Our second interrelated goal is to develop the leadership and organizing capacity of average, everyday neighborhood residents so that they can drive and shape change. We are community organizers at our core. And so we believe that, in the words of Ella Baker, strong people don't need strong leaders. And so our mission and our goal is to really ensure that community members have the tools that they need in order to drive change. And the last goal is to promote policies and evidence-based solutions that support and help shape healthier, safer, more equitable communities. So outside of like the nice, neat things that you can read on our website, in layman's terms and in quite short terms, we are an organization, a community-based organization at that, devoted to building power with everyday average neighborhood residents. That's it. Like building power.
And when we talk about building power, I wanted to take the time, if you will, to just talk about that, because many communities lack that organization and they lack that strength. But I know that you guys really work very hard at mobilizing and galvanizing individually as well as corporately.
Yeah, and I'll talk a bit about power and the way in which we see it at Katal. And so if you look up what the definition of power is, pretty much any dictionary will give you it's the ability to make change, it's the ability to influence, it's the ability to do something different than the norm. And so when we look at power, it usually comes in 2 forms. Organized money is one form. You have enough money, you can make change, you can make influence, you can do a lot of things. And the second form is organized people. And so enough people get into a room, you already know, Daren, you can immediately start to make change. It goes from 1 person in the room to 200 people in a room, and that can easily go to 2,000 people in a room. And I bet you if you're going in a room with 2,000 people, whatever you want is going to get done if you have enough power. And you have the people power. And so as a community-based organization, our main goal is to ensure that we have power in the way that is with organized people, so that people are organized so that they can drive and shape the power that they want. And so as an organization, we really devote ourselves to reaching out to community members, looking to community members who then become Katal members and then want to work on the things that we're doing. And because we're a community-based and member-driven organization, they bring their thoughts and ideas to the table and say, like, this is something that's important to me and to our community. Let's go and make this change. And so you see that across our work. We're not only in New York City, but we're statewide throughout New York and also in the state of Connecticut. And so we have those 2 offices, both in Connecticut and in New York. And so we work across both states in order to build enough collective power of community members so that we can drive and shape change in the ways in which we want to see change made, because we know that our current society is really geared towards those that are in power that do not have power that's necessarily centered around collective power of communities. It's usually centered around the collective and organized power of money. And so we're here to make sure that community members know what to do and are able to actually execute those things.
I want to talk a little bit about the criminal justice system. Obviously, a lot of people have discussions. We've been talking about this earlier on the show. Mass incarceration, particularly in communities of color, and the work that's being done to decriminalize so many people who've been a victim of this.
Yes, and so I think a lot of people know us for our work on criminal justice reform and even largely drug policy reform. You think you shared a bit of that in the introduction to who we are at Katal, but a lot of the work that we do in New York City is really centered around transforming the criminal legal system, and we'll get to it later in talking about some of the campaigns that we're running, namely our parole reform campaign and our campaign around COVID-19 in prisons and jails. But largely, the criminal justice system is working in the exact way that it is meant to work. It is a racist and classist system, and so it does not work for Black and Brown people and poor people. It does not work for queer people. It does not work for many communities, even though you see us overrepresented in the criminal legal system and in the criminal justice system. And so we need a massive overhaul, and we need these systems to legitimately work for us in the ways that they don't actually work for us right now.
And so, as you're working galvanizing people, you're working creating awareness. Talk to me about the awareness that you're creating and really public receptivity to that.
Thank you for that. So our organizers are on the ground working directly within communities with people who have been impacted by these issues. And I'll just look and talk a little bit about the parole reform work and answer this question about, how we talk to people in the community, what's their receptiveness as it relates to parole reform. You would be hard pressed to go into any community right now in New York City where people have not been touched by the criminal justice system, whether they themselves have been incarcerated, whether their parent has been incarcerated, whether a cousin of theirs was, incarcerated in juvie and did a juvie stint. Someone went to school for 10 years and then all of a sudden they came back, and we know that school is code for they got put in prison. And so when we're talking to community members about some of the parole reform work that we're doing, people already know that this is an issue. They may not have necessarily the language that I think in this society, this very heteronormative, patriarchal society, the language of the criminal legal system, but they know what's going on. There are many people that we're talking to, like I said, have either had this direct experience or indirectly with a loved one of theirs who have been impacted. So we find that when we're talking with people get what's happening. They may not have all of the, this language that those of us who work within the criminal legal system have the language, but people know what's happening. And our role is to really make sure that we're not lying to people, telling people what is going on. These are the things in which we're doing. What are the ways in which you see that the system can be changed? And now let's actually do that change collectively, rather than keep this, change only held within the few people who are able to access that language. And I know it seems like I'm harping on the language here, but that is a huge thing to overcome in thinking about the ways in which Black and Brown people, the ways in which people impacted by the criminal legal system have been marginalized and kept out of those spaces. So even though, again, coming full circle, you'd be hard pressed to go into any community in New York City, especially those who are Black and Brown, and find someone who hasn't been impacted. Our role as organizers is to really develop so they see themselves as, I may not have I may not have all the language right, but I know what's going on and I know what my community needs and I know what is necessary in order for us to make change. Now let's get down to business and all of us can make collective change so that the things that we are pushing for are community driven and are going to make real impactful, positive changes on people's lives.
A little bit about the Katal program and the Block program.
Yeah, so BLOCK is an acronym for our Building Leadership and Organizing Capacity program. And so we have been running BLOCK for a number of years now at Katal. And just to let you know, for everyone who's listening, Katal, we turned 5 in 2021. So we're a young organization, young and mighty. And so BLOCK is a program that initially got started in our Connecticut location, really centered around training up youth organizers and youth leaders in the state in order to tackle change. And so BLOCK over the years has morphed into 4 main areas within our Building Leadership and Organizing Capacity program. And so the first area is our BLOCK Roundtable. And so that is a roundtable space for organizers, and youth leaders throughout the state to come together and learn the different methodologies of organizing. And so it's not strictly community organizing, which is our methodology of organizing at Katal. We're community organizers, but it's open to all organizers. And it's a space where, again, organizers can come, and it helps to create that peer-to-peer learning network between organizers. So we also have our block apprenticeship program, which is another area. And so it's a space where we gather with individuals who are interested in becoming apprentice community organizers, and those apprentices will learn the different tools and tactics of organizing, learn about what it really takes to become an organizer, and like you put them through the block organizer training program, the apprenticeship training program, which is a pretty grueling training program, but is incredibly impactful and successful. And so generally, we also have our coaching and training opportunities through Block. And so we have a Block curriculum, and one of our co-founders and co-executive directors, Lorenzo Jones, will often work with different organizers that are looking for coaching and looking for additional training, and myself as well as the director of organizing with Katal. And then lastly, we also have a Block fellowship program, which is a track for people who may not necessarily know if organizing is what they want to do, but that's a little different than our apprenticeship program, but really want to try out organizing in their specific, and try out organizing and see if it really fits. And so when I actually started at Katal, I started as a community organizing fellow, learning the different tools and tactics of community organizing through the Block program. And so Block is one of our flagship programs of Katal, and one of the things that we do in order to continue to build the field of organizing. We're an organization, again, that's community-based and member-driven, but we also care about the longevity of the larger field of organizing, of harm reduction, which is one of the areas we work in that intersects with drug policy, with organizing within the criminal legal system. And so Block is an opportunity for us to also connect with other organizers and potential organizers in the future in order so that we have longevity and people have those connections.
Right. And I know that one of the things that you do is, in addition to organizing, is getting these campaigns out in full front and center. There is a campaign currently going on in New York City, and I want you to let our viewers know a little bit more about the campaign.
Absolutely. So I'll start with our parole reform campaign, which is a statewide campaign, but of course we need everybody, all hands on deck to support it. And so you can learn more about our parole reform campaign. I'll just say the website, lessismoreny.org. And I'll repeat it, lessismoreny.org. And so our parole reform campaign, Less is More New York, is really centered around a piece of legislation, the Less is More bill, that would radically transform the parole system. And so what the bill would do is, one, restrict the use of incarceration for technical parole violations. And technical parole violations are often minor rules violations and occasionally minor misdemeanors. And so they are a really big cause of reincarceration in New York. And so 40% of all people admitted to prison, state prison in New York were admitted for technical parole violations. So we see that it's a big chunk of who's cycling in and out of our system. The second thing that the bill would do is that it would bolster due process. So right now, if a person is on parole and they have an alleged technical parole violation, they immediately get sent back to incarceration. And so that's just an alleged. So bolstering due process rather than just immediately sending them back. The third thing that the bill would do is that it would provide speedy hearings, so that if a person needs their hearing for their technical parole violation, they get it quickly rather than waiting potentially weeks and months, which is what can happen. And the fourth thing that the bill would do is that it would provide an earned time credit. So every 30 days a person does well and goes without a violation, they get 30 days off the back end. And so that can effectively have someone's parole sentence, and it keeps people in the community. It shortens the amount of time that people are on a parole caseload. And so the bill would do those four things, and people can, of course, check out and look at ways to get involved by going to lessismoreny.org. And of course, you can read about some of the things that our members are doing under our client section and member section, where we talk and share our member stories. And you can read some of the latest updates on the campaign there as well.
Do you find a lot of support in this area or resistance?
There's a lot of support. New York is one of the worst states when it comes to incarcerating people for technical parole violations, and we are just far behind other states. We are the worst in the country, actually, in terms of incarcerating people on parole. And if you look at the number of people and groups and even elected officials who are supporting the bill, we have over 275 groups and elected officials who support it. Those are groups that are local to New York City, many groups who are in New York State, and we even have a couple of national groups that support smart parole reform because they see the trends of what's happening throughout our country. And New York may, seem to be a leader in criminal justice reform, but the only way in which New York has led on criminal justice reform is the work of organizers, activists, policymakers who legitimately wanted to make a change. So when we are talking about smart parole reform in the state of New York, you can take a look at our supporting groups letter with over, again, the 275 individuals and a few elected officials who've signed on. And you can just look to what people are saying about the need to pass parole reform in New York State and look at all the other states in which we are lagging behind. So it's desperately needed here in New York, and many people are receptive to parole reform.
Yeah. What things should we be keeping our eyes on in this current climate?
Well, of course, I think parole reform, because that is a big issue right now, especially in New York. I would also want to take a second to really push everyone to keep track of what's happening as it relates to the pandemic and our loved ones who are behind bars. And so we also have a Free Them Now New York campaign, which is designed to ensure that people who are currently incarcerated have safety due to the pandemic. And so those numbers, the numbers of people who are incarcerated, especially in New York City jails, are on the rise. And we know that while we have the vaccine, the pandemic is still not over. There is a reason why we're doing this virtually versus an in-person interview. So I really do implore people to pay attention to what's happening as it relates to our incarcerated loved ones and COVID-19, because even though we cannot see them, they are still important, and we need to make sure that we're not letting their needs go by while the rest of the world continues to move as it relates to the pandemic. And if anyone is interested in learning more about what we're doing and just taking part, feel free to check us out at Katal Center, KATALCENTER.org, and you can learn more about the work that we're doing around COVID in prisons and jails in New York City and state.
Yeah, Kenyatta, we're going to have to leave it there, but certainly we want to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, we have to get you back and talk about that, because when you talk about COVID-19 and how it's impacted so many people, I think one thing that gets not highlighted enough are those who are incarcerated and what's going on behind those prison walls. And I know you've got your finger on the pulse there, so we got to bring you back to talk about that.
We'll be delighted. Thank you.
All righty, Kenyatta Muzzani, our guest here on the Social Justice Forums. Thanks so much for being with us, Kenyatta.
Thank you.
All righty, well, we want to tell you that unfortunately we are at the end of our show today. Now, we do hope that you just enjoyed this week's discussion on the Social Justice and Anti-Violence Forum. Now, if you want to see the re-episode, the rewatch of it, yes, BronxNet.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation, you're always welcome to use any of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. Join us next week. We're going to elevate the conversation, could have more discussion where we continue to talk about social justice, where we bring awareness, but also promote civic engagement. I'm Daren Jaime saying take care and God bless.